Good evening, namaste, and a very warm welcome to all the members, honorable ambassadors, heads of state, members of Alliance, our partner countries from YEA, Young Indians, Bright Sparks, interns, and all other our fellow CII members. This event, the planning for this event started 1 year back, and over a period of that time, we have had certain moments. There were moments of anguish, there were moments of fear. In the last 6 months, in fact, the entire team has been meeting every Friday to plan this event. And even when the event was closed, we felt that it is never going to happen. And for a simple reason that monsoon, the weather, which is so unpredictable in India, we just thought that it is not going to happen. But I'm very happy to say with the support of all the member countries, there were a few countries which participated with sponsorships, there were a few countries which participated with the delegations, and the support from everyone. We now today have a 550 delegate strong membership here, representing we have representation from 30 countries. We have, this is one of the largest congregation of young entrepreneurs that we have seen in the last 14 years. I would just take a little bit of time talking about the theme for this year. The theme is Hum. Hum in Hindi means we, us. And if you look at the meaning, it also means togetherness. This also aligns with the theme that our Honorable Prime Minister has given for the main G20, that is Vasudev Kutum. The entire world is one place. With so many changes happening around the world, with so many changes happening around us, the world is evolving at a very fast pace. And more so than ever, there's a need for collaboration, there's a need for coming together, and there's a need for creating new opportunities for business and social enterprises. Now, the world has been changing, and there are multiple reasons for that. If you look at it in the last 100 years, the world changed because of the speed of transportation. There were faster planes, there were faster cars. The world became a smaller place. In the last 20 years, the world has become even smaller because of the speed of communication. And because of this, there are many more new opportunities in the digital landscape, in industries, to collaborate and create synergies amongst different nations. Young Entrepreneurs Alliance, over the period of past 14 years, has been instrumental in doing that. They have provided us an opportunity to travel to different countries, to meet different people, and to find synergies, and also to explore what is happening in those respective countries. In fact, I'm also very happy to share that Young Indians as an organization was a part of the founding members, and it was in the same place in New Delhi 14 years back that the charter document was created for Young Entrepreneurs Alliance. And the same document, which is going to be revised, is again going to happen in Hampi 2 days from now. So Young Entrepreneurs has been instrumental in providing us that opportunity. Now coming to India, all of you have traveled from different parts of the world. And why India is in a unique position, you must have heard that India is one of the fastest growing economies, fastest growing large economies for the past 3 years, and is expected to be so for the next foreseeable future. By 2047, we expect to be a fully developed country, which will have 1 billion plus people, the middle class, for whom the purchasing power and their consumption patterns are rising. I say that there are three very unique things that make India special at the moment. And that is because of the 3 Ds: democracy, development, and demographics. Demographics, everyone knows that India is a large country, it's a large market. We in fact are one of the most populous country in the world. But more so, we are one of the youngest nations. The purchasing power is rising. We have a large aspiring middle class. So the market is huge for that. We have democracy with the largest democracy in the world, and we have a government that is focused on development. Now with these all three factors put together, this is a very unique place to be. Over the period of next 2 days, we have curated speakers who are industry veterans. We have policy advocates who will tell you and make you understand that what is happening in India. What is happening in India. My request to you, all of you present here, is to network amongst them, to meet our Indian friends, to explore possibilities, synergies, and to network. Networking together, if we are able to create any enterprise that can bring about a better tomorrow, whether it is through business or through social enterprises, then I think the objective for this summit will be achieved. We also have two very special initiatives that we have taken this year. One is the InnoFest, Innovation Festival, that is happening in the room next. Would request all of you to please visit that. It showcases innovations where traditionally India was not very strong in. Digital ecosystem is something that all of us are aware about, but these are some areas where India is really leaping ahead and there are possibilities for collaboration. And the second program is a Bright Sparks program, where students aged from 13 to 17 years, all of us are collected here to give our recommendations or communicate to the government. But these are the people for whom those recommendations are important because we want to build a better tomorrow. These are the future leaders. If they can be involved at this stage, it will be very nice if they can look back after 25 years at this document and see what were the recommendations given and whether they have been implemented or not. So all the Sherpas of different countries, all the members, these students will be reaching out to you. Please bear with them, answer their questions. They will have queries, but if we can involve them, it would be a gesture that can stay on forever. So with that, I would once again like to welcome all of you to our country. We say Atithi Devo Bhav, Devo Bhav. That means that the guests are like God, and we hope that over the period of next 2 days, we will extend our hospitality. The entire team will do that. So thank you so much for joining here us today. And with that, I would also like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Sanjeev Chopra. He's the main speaker for the evening. He retired from the Indian Administrative Services, holds a PhD in management, besides degree in law, history, and literature. He is the recipient of many awards, a fellowship of the World Bank, and a fellowship at the University of Cornell. He started his career as a district magistrate and moved on till 31st December 2019. He was the additional chief secretary to the government of West Bengal. He also served as the director of Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy, and post his superannuation, he studied the political economy of reorganization of Indian states, which was published recently. I now request Mr. Chopra to deliver his special address. And thank you once again, guys. Thank you.
Thank you to YEA and the Young Entrepreneurs Alliance and all of us who are present here from 30 countries, and especially the Bright Sparks, whom we are trying to, get into the whole aspect of understanding what international relations is, how people get together, and the difficulties in getting together. Because, if you see Robert Frost's poem, he talks about not having fences, and then in the next line he says that good fences make good neighbors. So this is actually the book which President Biden presented to our Prime Minister when he visited him. Friends, I've been asked to talk about multilateralism and how we are all working together today in this umbrella of G20. And Mr. Gill, our compere, has just given you some idea about all that we are doing. Anuj just told you about democracy, about demographics, and what all we are doing. But friends, let's understand that the quest to go beyond oneself is very much a part of history. But earlier, what happened was that we thought that my success is at the cost of someone else. And I'll give you 3 examples. One from India, one from the Holy Roman Empire, and one from the Caliphate. I'm glad that we have friends from Turkey also. You see, in India we had the tradition of a Chakravarti Raja. That is a king whose influence extends beyond his kingdom. And therefore, the king used to set a horse called the Ashwamedh horse. And whichever area the horse went in, either that kingdom had to say that, yes, I accept you as the sovereign or accept you as the suzerain, or you go to war. So that is the way we exercised control. That is the way the nations, an important nation, when a nation became strong militarily, financially, or intellectually or culturally, they wanted to extend their sphere of influence. But that was that if I am powerful, you are not powerful. because my power is power only if you are not powerful. Then you find how Alexander tried to extend his kingdom. That was in the centuries which we call the before Common Era. And post the Common Era, you've seen the Holy Roman Empire, how Rome wanted to extend its influence. And the influence that Rome extended, although they used the term Holy Roman Empire, and somebody also said that it is neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, apologies to the Italians present here. But the fact is that you are strong because somebody else is not strong. That has been the basis of multilateralism in the past. Likewise with the Khalifa. If I am strong, then you accept that you will accept me as the big boss. So the question of equality amongst human beings, as also amongst nations, was an entity, was something which has come about only in recent times. It started with the League of Nations. And of course, the League of Nations was not very successful. That's why we've had a terrible world war. But the implication of that world war was that all nations in the country, in the world, decided to come together to make something called the UN, the United Nations. And the United Nations was the political alliance of the top leaders. And within the UN system, we are aware that there were the big five, at that time the most dominant countries, the USA, the USSR, France, UK, and China. Earlier it was Formosa and then it became China. But this was not a very equal or not a very stable system, because this was a system in which some countries were more powerful than the others. And remember that in a constituency of 160 people, 160 countries when the UN started, now 193, some had more power than the others. So the system was stable because these 5 countries had more power. And when I say more power, they had more financial muscle, they had great armies, they had great strength, and therefore they could impose their will on the rest of the world. The rest of the world did not like it because we tried the non-aligned movement in our country. The non-aligned movement at some point of time had more members than any other alliance, but it did not work. Also, let us realize that at various points of time, different global institutions come up which are multilateral, but they lose their strength and they lose their muscle. Take the Commonwealth, for example. At some point of time, the Commonwealth was one of the strongest institutions in the world because, the Pax Britannica was there. But over a period of time, the Commonwealth has lost its salience. Yes, the Commonwealth organizes some games and we have some meetings here and there. But as a political force, Commonwealth has gone. At the point of time when the UN was made, and let's also remember that before the UN was made, you already had UNESCO in place and you had the Food and Agricultural Organization come together because these were the two things which the nations wanted to collaborate on terms of equality. But anyway, to cut a long story short, the fact is that nations compete with each other, nations collaborate with each other, nations are also in conflict with each other. Because all these 3 things will go together. You cannot have a world in which there will be no conflict. You cannot have a world in which there will be no collaboration. You cannot have a world in which there will be no cooperation. So all these strands will work together. Which strand gets stronger, which strand becomes more powerful, depends on the larger scenario of economic development, political development, cultural development, and social development. So this is what was happening. But India was the founding member of the UN. And I must tell all the ladies present here, all the women present here, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights first said that all men are created equal. It was India which said that all men and women are created equal. So I think that was the first seminal contribution of the Indian delegation to the UN. The very first delegation made it very clear that equality is for men and women. And therefore, this was a point which I thought I'll share with you. And as you are aware, that along with the UN system, you had the World Bank and you had the IMF and something called the Washington Consensus. But this Washington Consensus was there because all the moolah was there, all the power was there, and the gap between, say, India or say Ghana or say Singapore or say Malaysia with these developed countries was very, very wide. It was a very wide gap. So the world, although no longer unipolar, but it was a world in which the US domination was quite complete, very significant. And of course, you had the communist bloc. But there again, although everybody was equal, yet we all know that the Russian Federation within the USSR was the most powerful federation. Friends, in these last 7 decades, many organizations have come up. The OECD came up, which was an organization of the more developed countries, 32 countries. They formed the OECD to implement the Marshall Plan in Europe. You've had ASEAN come up, you've had BIMSTEC come up, you've had the Organization of Islamic Countries come up to get all the Islamic nations together. But I must mention here that India is also home to 11% of the world's Muslims. 11% of the world's Muslims are in India. And when India wanted to join the Organization of Islamic Countries, there was resistance from some of our neighbors, and in fact, just one neighbor. But over a period of time, India has also been invited to the high table. So, point that I'm making is that all countries today like to use every possible forum to express their views, to express their thoughts, and to convey that we are all connected. When we say that we are all connected, it does not mean that we are dependent. There's a lot of difference between being connected and being dependent. And I think it's a very important thing that we must realize. Another important thing in diplomacy that we use is that these days we use the word rival rather than the word enemy. You see, till very recently, till about 5 decades ago, we used to say so-and-so is an enemy. Now we say that India and China are competing rivals. And when you change the terminology from enemy to rivalry, yes, of course, there is a difference, but language makes a lot of difference. So what I'm trying to tell you, friends, is that over the period of time, multilateralism has actually got very strong roots because the nature of the world has changed. The locus of power, including economic power and political power, has changed quite a bit. And therefore, if you look at the UN or if you look at the OECD, some of the things which come there to your mind is that all these organizations had secretariats. And the secretariats drove the agenda. The secretariats drove the agenda, and that was the time. I mean, if you look at the world between 1950s and now, what are some of the trends that you see? One, that the world does not have the same levels of hierarchy as the world had 50 years ago. The world has seen economic power getting more and more diffused. The locus of power has moved towards Asia, and very soon it will move to Asia and Africa, and that will be something which will be very, very interesting. Now, why did the G20 come up? The G20, as you're all aware, is the consequence of financial crisis, the first financial crisis of late 1990s, 97, 98, when the East Asian miracle, when that collapsed, and that led to all the ECB presidents, the central bank presidents come together. And then you had yet another crisis in 2008. And these were crises which the World Bank and the IMF could not handle. Remember that an institution which can deliver, that institution will continue to survive, not just survive, but do well. But institutions, when they fail to deliver what they were meant to be, then that institution may survive, but that institution loses that vibrance. It loses the vibe, it loses that vibration, it loses that sense, So the UN is becoming a bit of a, it's there, but the brightest sparks will not be in the UN because the UN does nothing. It's a talking shop. And it's a talking shop which is good in its way, but you cannot come to any decisions because some of the resolutions of the UN are so plain and so, they're do-good resolutions. I mean, do-good resolutions actually lead to no good because resolutions have to have a certain point. That is why you had organizations like BRICS come up because Goldman Sachs realized around 2011 that actually the locus of the world is changing. It is going to be Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa was added. So these BRICS countries are playing a very, very important and a very, very significant role. And next month, the BRICS summit will be held and our Prime Minister will be going there as well. So BRICS, IPSA, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and G20, all these are new organizations which show that the world is becoming very diverse and the locus of power is moving in various directions. But more importantly, G20 is a very unique example because the G20 is not just a gathering of political leaders. What does the G20 comprise of? I'm sure many of us are aware, but the G20 has got 3 tracks. It's got the Sherpa track, which is looking at 13 very important issues. These issues raised from, all drawn from the Sustainable Development Goals, but these are issues like agriculture. And in fact, I was telling the delegates from Turkey that way back, I think in 14 or 15, I was in Ankara as a part of the G20 delegation on agriculture and really enjoyed my stay there. We have a working group on anti-corruption. We have a working group on culture. In fact, in the last meeting of the working group on culture, we set a Guinness Book of World Record by creating a Lambani craft, That was something great. We have a working group on digital economy, disaster risk management, development, education, employment, environment and climate sustainability, energy transitions, health, trade and investment, and tourism. Now, friends, it therefore means that you are moving beyond politics. So it's not just what Prime Minister Modi and what President Biden and what Putin would think. That's important. But the G20 is now focused on these 13 groups. And who meet there? It is the heads of the agriculture department, scientists of agriculture department, managers of tourism, people who are connected to the digital economy. So the range has gone up. India has hosted more than 100 meetings across the states. And that, therefore, has been an occasion for all of us to come together, like you have come together. Right? So this is an occasion for all of us to come together. The second track, which the G20 looks at, is the finance track, in which we look at, in which the central bank managers and monetary managers and fiscal managers, they come together and they discuss issues like financial infrastructure. They discuss issues like financing infrastructure, infrastructure which is sustainable, finance which is sustainable, debts which can be handled. So that is the second track, which is more government, but very important. And the third is the engagement groups. And that is where the Young Entrepreneurs Alliance comes in. The Business 20. And Business 20, mind you, it's not just Business 20. You have Labor 20, you have Parliament 20, you have Science and Technology 20, you have Startup 20, you have Think 20, you have Women 20, and you have Youth 20. So these engagement groups are actually the new multilateralism, because this is how the world will come together. The world, of course, is happier when our ministers meet and our prime ministers meet and they have a handshake opportunity. But that's not what's going to drive the world of tomorrow. The world of tomorrow, because of democratization and because of the strengthening of democracy, becomes strong and democratic when people meet, when entrepreneurs meet, when young people meet, and when they discuss ideas, when they discuss their thoughts, when they collaborate, when they discuss things. That is how the world's going to become a different place. And when I say different place, I mean a much better place. So I would like to congratulate CII and the Young Indians and the Young Entrepreneur Alliance and the Bright Sparks for coming here. And in these 3 days, what we will learn from each other is much more than we could get from any textbook of political science. Much more than you can get by downloading 5 articles from Foreign Affairs or from Fair Observer or from Economist or from various things, because knowledge is one thing, information is one thing, but getting together, talking, deliberating, and discussing things in an environment which is non-adversarial. Most importantly, the ability to listen. So I think these are some of the great and wonderful things that you're going to be having in the next 2 days. I'm very happy that we have 32 bright sparks here, and they're the ones who are going to be preparing the agenda, because that's the future. That's the future not only for India, that's the future for the world, and the world is a family, and in every family there'll be competition, there'll be collaboration, there'll be a little bit of conflict. So as long as these conflicts are little conflicts, as long as these problems are little problems, life is good. Thank you very much.